Hi friends, recently there was a comment on my channel and this was from a guy in class 12. This guy is very interested in things such as theory of relativity and so on. He loves the work of some of these eminent scientists such as Einstein. But this guy has become very disenchanted by realizing that he has to do a PhD to become a scientist. He may even have to do a postdoc and so on before he can become an assistant professor or a researcher in some lab. So this is getting some people very disappointed, and I'm going to talk about this particular issue, which I'm framing under the topic that is PhD scaring you? And this can be for people at different levels of the education process. Maybe you are somebody in the high school stage, at the end of high school. Maybe you are somebody in college. Maybe you are doing your master's degree program. You want to do a PhD, or you want to do something which requires a PhD. Maybe become a research scientist in quantum physics, or maybe you want to do research in biotechnology. So many of these disciplines do require a PhD. So let's look at these aspects about problems which may actually scare people who are thinking about doing a PhD. And often these kind of things also scare the parents and any relatives these people may have. So the number one point is that do not look at any career goal or any future aim in life as a destination. Rather, try to focus on the journey, because if you are focusing on the destination, you will often find that it's a very long process of maybe years, even a decade, before you get the true benefits of your work in terms of salary, in terms of remuneration, rank, and so on. So what you need to do is to concentrate on smaller periods of time. So for example, if you are a high school student, completely focus on getting into a good college or university and do your bachelor's degree. If you are a bachelor's degree student and you have developed some interest in doing higher studies beyond the bachelor's degree, then think about how you can do a master's degree from a top institution or from a good institution. And if you are somebody who is doing a master's degree and is still interested in doing a PhD, then think about how you can do your PhD from a top institution. And if you are a guy who is doing a PhD, think about how you can do a postdoc from a top institution, and so on. So this kind of process where you are focused on whatever goal is nearest to you will keep you motivated. If you think about the end result, it's going to be very demotivating for you, because do remember that most of the time the people who do accomplish a lot in life, they never thought about it when they started their journey. So even if you look at the history of any of these eminent scientists, very often they were rather poor students in high school, they were average students in their college, and they only flourished later in life, maybe in graduate school and beyond. So this is something to keep in mind. Now the number two problem which comes from this is that keep first things first. So this is a very well known adage which is told to people out there. So don't think about the second thing, the third thing, the fourth thing, and so on. Look at the goal which is in front of you, right in front of you, which you need to finish before you can move on to the other goal. So just like I mentioned before, do not think of advanced degrees if you are somebody who has not yet completed the bachelor's degree. Keep your focus right here and do not get demotivated. So you need to always split up a problem into many smaller parts. You should even focus on the immediate semester, on the courses you are taking this semester right itself, and how you can get the best grades here, because what's going to happen is that these small victories are going to precede any big victory which you get in life. So that's the second part. Now the third issue is there is a difference between liking a subject and mastering a subject. So many a time when you are a young person, you may be very much eager to know a certain field. You may feel that space flight is very interesting. You may feel that relativity theory is very interesting. You may think that quantum computing or quantum mechanics or particle physics is very interesting. And this is so because a lot of the popular science literature, a lot of the TV documentaries which are brought out in channels such as Discovery, National Geographic, and so on are very well made. They are giving you the gist of the field in a very high level manner. And very often people look at these things and they say that I really like this subject a lot. Now, do remember that to master a certain subject to the level that you can teach in it and contribute to it would require you to get very deep into that subject. So you would probably need to do a bachelor's degree if you want to contribute to something, and most likely you will need to do a master's degree if you want to master that particular subject. So I would say that the master's degree lets you actually come to the level where you can teach a certain subject, and PhD lets you come to a level where you can actually produce new literature in the subject. Now, every person doesn't need to come to this level. For example, if you liked relativity theory a lot, quantum physics a lot, you could just take a course in your college in these disciplines, and you could satisfy your intellectual curiosity about these particular fields and move on with your life. So there is certainly the issue of supply and demand. There is only so much demand in terms of the number of people who are going to be required in any of these esoteric subjects. So do keep that in mind. There are far more jobs, for example, in computer related field than there would be in particle physics. Now, the fourth issue is enjoyment versus sacrifice. Now, too many people focus on the fact that doing advanced degrees involves a lot of sacrifice. So they think there is a sacrifice of their money. They don't earn enough when they are a PhD student. There is a sacrifice in terms of seniority loss. They see some of their friends have joined companies and are making a lot of money and so on. They are also getting married and they have families, etc., etc. And the fact that they are missing out on these things in their life makes them quite unhappy and sad. Now, one of the things you need to realize is that there is a lot of enjoyment in being a PhD student also, and you need to change your personality such that you start enjoying these things. For example, when I was a PhD student, I always used to enjoy the prospect of going to nice locations during the conferences. So this kept me motivated throughout the down periods, that I would be presenting my work at a nice conference, and this conference is going to be at a nice city, and then at the end of the conference I'm going to take a day off and I'm going to travel around the city. So this particular aim of traveling to various places around the world through conferences kept me motivated. Another thing which used to motivate me was the fact that I could later go for postdocs and sabbaticals and visits in various foreign countries around the world. So if you are somebody who is interested in these fringe benefits which come out for a PhD person, then you will certainly enjoy this journey much more. Now, beside this travel, there is also the enjoyment of having an enormous amount of freedom. So if you are a PhD student, very often you can work whenever you want. You can work in the evening, you can work late at night, or you can work in the morning, you can work during the weekend, and you can take off during some of the weekdays. So all these things become possible because of the flexibility of your work. You essentially have the freedom to choose your time as long as you are getting the work done in the lab. So again, think about things which you can enjoy while being a PhD student: the privilege of studying at a good university, of staying in the campus with intellectual people, of being in the company of very smart professors, scientists, and postdoc is itself a privilege. And if you feel you enjoy these things, then you will certainly like the fact that you are doing a PhD. If you are completely money centric, then you may be somewhat disappointed, and this is why many of the people who are very money centric typically leave the educational institutions after they have finished a bachelor's degree, or certainly they have finished a master's degree. Most such people would probably do an MBA degree and then they would join the corporate ladder. Now, the next issue is about a hobby versus a job. So very often, if you really like something, you can pursue it as a hobby, because what happens is that when something becomes a job, it becomes a much more serious endeavor. So you will see that in many cases, if you are interested, for example, in certain subject, maybe you are interested in computing, or you're interested in just plants and gardening, it's much more fun if you are doing it as a hobby. If you actually try to become a botanist, or you try to take on any role in a professional manner, you will find that this will become a very difficult problem. You will now have bosses, you have competition, you have to apply for grants, you have to make sure that people actually believe the work you are doing is important, and so on. So a lot of the fun of doing any problem goes away when you convert it into an actual job and become a professional in that field. So I would say that if you are really enjoying something, you can also consider it to be a hobby. So there is nothing telling you that you cannot have a hobby in something which you really like to do. Maybe you are a person who likes to read philosophy books, who likes to read a lot of literature. Doesn't mean that you have to do a PhD in literature. Similarly, if you are a person who likes to look at the stars and figure things out there, then again you can do this as a hobby while you are doing any regular job on the side which is paying your bills and letting you make money. So again, just because something is there which you like a lot, you do not want to necessarily convert it into a profession, because like I mentioned before, there are only so many jobs out there in any of these fields. So for example, if you wanted to become an astronomer, there are only so many jobs out there. So what you need to do is that you need to think about that very carefully, whether you want to become a person who wants a job in that discipline or you want to convert that discipline to a hobby. Then the next part is always think about the exit strategy. So do not make any goals which have no exit strategy, because that's going to put a lot of pressure and stress on you. And this often happens to people who say that they are going to become the next great scientist in some field. So what happens with that is the pressure is intense. They essentially feel they have to do the PhD, they have to publish a lot of papers and so on. And then what happens is that again some of the fun which is there in this research starts to dissipate, because do remember that having role models is not very useful nowadays, because all the role models of the past have traveled in a certain time period which was different, and today's time period is different. So you cannot really compare the time period of a person who was in the last century with the time period today, with the structures which are present in the government and capitalistic systems today and so on, and what are the important problems in today's field. So again, I would say that always have an exit strategy at any point in your life, after the BS degree, after the MS degree, after the PhD degree, after the postdoc. And even if you are somebody who is working in the university, do not get tied to your university job. Maybe you do not get tenure and you have to go and work in a startup somewhere. So always keep these exit strategies in mind. Finally, number 7th point is about work-life balance. And a lot of the problems which scare PhD people or aspirants is that they do not have any idea of work-life balance. They essentially put their entire profession or work into their life. So there is actually no fuzzification or no differentiation between your work and your life. So I would always say that have a life outside work. Do something such as music, or go to the gym, take part in exercise, do yoga, do meditation, read literature, read books on philosophy, or even spend your time listening to YouTube videos, because you need to have a life outside your work so that you are not totally tied down to progress in your work. Because as I have mentioned many times, if you are on the PhD journey, you will encounter a lot of rejections. Papers are going to get harsh reviews. There is the notorious reviewer too, who is going to badly trash your work and so on. But again, at the end of the day, you should just go home and continue with your regular work. It may be that you want to cook a good meal tonight, or maybe you want to watch a movie on Netflix. So whatever you want to do should be decoupled from your work activity. And then what will happen is that you will actually enjoy the journey to the PhD, to the postdoc and so on. And you will feel that you have a lot of freedom in your life, and that the work you are doing is contributing substantially to the human knowledge base. So this was my answer to the question about, is PhD scaring you? Don't let the PhD scare you. Make sure that you enjoy the PhD process. So I'll end this video now, and I will see you in a video sometime soon. See you then.